don't think I have a single one in the house that fits that stereotype of greyhound. But because they are greyhound breed, people assume that that's what they'll be like. So we subconsciously have an expectation of the breed, like a stereotype for that breed. And maybe that's why we choose that breed in the first place. And of course, that then causes problems if it turns out that yours is not like that.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, and I think that the issue. I mean, I've worked with behaviour cases for Old English sheepdogs, and they can develop and do develop the same range of behavioural challenges that any other breed does. So I think that I think in a way that Old English sheepdogs kind of suffer from the fact that people think they don't require much input.
Mm.
So there's a big similarity between, greyhounds and
Yeah,
Old English,
yeah.
is that people's perception is they don't do very much with them
Mm.
because they're just they're supposed to be happy-go-lucky,
Mm.
amiable dogs that will fit in.
Yeah.
But of course, what people forget is that they had a working
It is still a
background.
herding breed, isn't it? I mean, the name says it.
Yes, I
But
think
you
I think
wouldn't
there's a
think,
clue.
yeah, you wouldn't expect to see one doing agility at crops, would you? Like a Welsh
No.
collie, but it is still a sheepdog, as a Welsh collie is a sheepdog, effectively.
Yeah. And my dogs, I do I don't do agility or anything like that formally, but at mine I have agility equipment, and
Mm.
my dogs, not the girls, they're too young yet, but
Yeah.
I mean Eric will he'll fly up over the
Oh,
A-frame
bless
and
him.
he'll do
That
the
would be
dog
good.
walk. I mean, and he loves jumping.
Yeah.
But that's a kind of very specialized thing. But
Mm.
I once asked on an Old English sheepdog group, how many of you do things with your dogs? What do
Mm.
you do? And there was one person that said, "Oh, I take my dog to something or other." I can't
Mm.
remember. Um, the rest of them didn't. And the thing is with greyhounds, so when you think about what their physical makeup, um, you know, they, you know, they could do so many other things.
Mm.
But what people think about is, and I've heard this before, as long as they can have a really fast run, somewhere secure, let them
Mm.
have a really fast run. That's all they need. That's all they need.
Mm.
Do that every now and again, and your greyhound will be happy. And of course, when you think about that from a dog as a full entity, um, there's more to them than the fact that they can run really fast.
Yes, bless them. But I
You
think
know,
they don't necessarily get to explore that in themselves. I was talking in one of my hot topic sessions recently about sniffing. And one
mm,
thing I found is that I've almost had to show mine how to find things with their noses
yeah,
because and even now, AJ, if we're scatter feeding, he'll come to me and he'll want me to hand him one.
yeah,
He doesn't want to have to find it on the grass.
yes,
And I have to point the treats out or they have to see it thrown and then they'll follow where I throw it. So they're following the movement rather than
mm,
using their nose as the first thing. If they see me throw it, they can find it. If they don't see it thrown, they won't kind of go and search it out.
go-
And
and I
and I've
guess
had to
that,
work at that to get them to want to use their nose. It's like I didn't know I could do this. I didn't know my nose
yes,
functioned like this. If I
uh-huh.
don't see it, I'm not interested.
And I suppose when you think about it, it's a bit, again, like my Old English, that they are very, very driven by movement.
Mm.
And so greyhounds obviously
Yeah,
are,
yeah,
sight hounds. That's the whole point, isn't it? That
yeah,
they
yeah.
notice movement. But I suppose the thing is, again, it's about saying yes, they are that, you know, but they could do other things,
Yes.
So it isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that we want our dogs to go off and do obedience trials and things like that. I can't think of anything more boring. But giving them these different experiences. Some things they'll like as individuals,
Yeah.
and never mind
Good enough.
the breed, but as an individual, that dog might really enjoy that. But their cousin, who's, same breed, might say, nah, not
No,
for me,
no.
and that's the thing we have to remember, it is about different personalities, different likes, different dislikes.
Yeah, yeah.
Instead of thinking that we're taking a breed on that is coming ready
It's
made,
like this. Yeah, that fits
with
this
the
shape.
instructions.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I know mine are all very different. I have the terrible trio of Floppy, Gandalf, and Jim, and they were all out and getting in the way and annoying me and doing irritating stuff when I'm trying to record things or digging holes in the garden because they're helping me. And the other two are usually fast asleep in bed.
Yeah,
So they're very different, and they're very different in what they choose to play with and how much they want to play and whether they have zoom ears or whether they'd rather sniff. It's really quite varied. And so they've
yeah,
all got very, very different personalities, even though they're all greyhound.
yes.
And one thing I was interested in was, how are you finding Esme's personality differs from Ethel and Eric? And even more so now, I know she's Ethel's sister. So
Yeah.
two girls from the same litter, and how have they developed differently in their personality?
Yeah, I mean the interesting thing is if you saw them together, um, like if I'd seen them, if I'd met Esme and I didn't know she was Ethel's sister, I wouldn't have known.
Mm.
They don't look particularly alike. Um, Esme's much bigger than Ethel. She's
Oh,
quite small and petite, and Esme's bigger. She's
yeah.
bigger made. Um, but the interesting thing for me is now the way that I try and think about it is you've got personality
Mm.
and you've got character.
Yeah.
So I always think of it, rightly or wrongly, but in the way that I try and define it for myself is character is the essence of you.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
really what makes you you.
Yeah.
Personality is something that develops on top of that.
Yes.
So that's the way I like to think about it.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
um, they had different experiences.
Mm.
So their characters are probably quite similar. They're both quite
Mm.
soft, as in, they're quite easygoing
Yeah.
dogs. They're not kind of the type of dog that you would um, say, oh, you need to really watch
Mm.
because they're quite sparky or
Mm.
anything. They're quite soft.
Quite laid
They
back.
seem, yeah, and they seem like the old thing that everybody says, good natured.
Yeah.
They seem that way. They're very different the way that they present now, though. So their
Mm.
personalities have developed differently because of their experiences. So Ethel is much more of an optimist.
Yes.
She goes about everything at 100 miles an hour. Everything's going to be great. And I'll need to get into the middle of all of that.
Yeah.
And that's great fun. Esme is more, oh, well, I'll maybe just wait and see. I'll
Mm.
sit back here.
Mm.
And once she feels more confident,
Mm.
then you see that character
Yeah.
coming through. So I obviously don't know, whether her experiences
Mm.
prior to coming to me have shaped the way that she is. But I mean, they couldn't not, if you know what I mean. It's
Yeah.
got to,
You would have thought
you
so.
can have a brother and sister who are, or two sisters, humans that are very
Mm.
different. Although they grew up in the same household, same mum and dad, same school, they experienced it differently.
Mm.
So I think the interesting thing for me was I expected that the character would probably be similar,
Mm.
but I knew that what I would see presenting as personality
Mm.
would likely be different.
Mm.
And I am in a way quite grateful because having two extremely optimistic dogs that throw themselves into the middle of everything is maybe quite a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and Ethel just thinks that everything and everybody is there for her
Mm.
entertainment.
Yes.
No. Whereas Esme is more reserved and
Yeah.
a little bit nervous about it all
Yeah.
as well. you know.
What about Eric?
Eric is different again. Eric's a happy boy. He's very, very good natured. He is really easygoing as well. Um, he's not quite as optimistic as Ethel, so he's probably between the two of them. So he's not nervous or too worried, but he's not quite at the
Yeah.
really optimistic end.
Yeah.
So it's quite funny that I've got, they're not extremes, but I've got the two girls who
And
are
Eric
different,
in the middle.
kind of Eric in the
Yeah.
middle, really, I would
Yeah.
say.
Look out for new videos every Monday, and why not subscribe so you don't miss out?